Jonathan Hayes had trained for this moment for nearly a decade, yet standing before the gates of the palace, his confidence wavered. The surface of the planet shimmered in strange hues, colors that humans had no names for. The sky was a swirl of soft violet and bright gold, and the ground beneath his boots seemed alive, pulsing faintly as if it had a heartbeat. Every step toward the palace felt like walking into a dream or a nightmare. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. He wasn't just Jonathan Hayes, ambassador of Earth. He carried the hopes, fears, and failures of an entire species. The palace itself was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Towering spires of crystal stretched high into the sky, refracting the light into rainbows that danced across the landscape. Strange flying creatures glided silently between the towers, their bodies translucent, wings flickering like silk in the wind. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something sweet, almost floral, but it made Jonathan's chest tighten. This world, this empire, was magnificent and dangerous. He knew they were not to be underestimated. Inside, the palace was even more overwhelming. The halls were enormous, with ceilings that disappeared into darkness above. Floating orbs of light moved gently along the corridors, casting warm glows on the walls, which were carved with shapes that seemed to move when he looked at them directly. And then he saw her. The alien queen sat upon a throne made of a single piece of luminous crystal, her enormous frame almost perfectly symmetrical. Scales of molten gold covered her body, glinting as the light danced across them. Her eyes, deep and piercing, seemed to look not just at him, but through him. Jonathan felt a strange shiver run down his spine. He had faced hostile governments, terrifying negotiations, even life-threatening scenarios. But nothing prepared him for the presence of a being who could make him feel so small with a single glance. He swallowed hard and tried to remember the speeches, the protocols, the carefully prepared words. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice shaking more than he wanted to admit. "I come in peace. I bring greetings from Earth." The hall fell silent. Every attendant froze in place, their eyes wide. Jonathan felt as though time had stopped. His heart raced, and a cold sweat ran down his back. The queen tilted her head slightly, her gaze unyielding. The silence stretched on, almost unbearable, and he wondered if he had made a mistake by coming at all. Maybe humans were not ready to meet a civilization so ancient and powerful. Then she spoke. The sound was nothing like he expected. It was not soft or gentle, nor calm or melodic. It was fiery, full of authority, anger, and intelligence. It struck Jonathan like a hammer to his chest. "You dare speak to me without understanding," she said. Her voice carried through the hall, vibrating in a way that made the walls hum. The queen leaned forward slightly, her massive eyes fixed on him. "Do you know what your kind has done to your own world? Do you know how many species you have destroyed, how many lives you have wasted, how many worlds you have with your ignorance?" Jonathan froze. He had expected a polite greeting, perhaps a test of words, but this was something else entirely. He felt small, a mere insect beneath the gaze of a being who had lived for centuries, who had likely seen civilizations rise and fall, and now looked upon him and his species with judgment. I come with goodwill," he stammered, trying to find words that could convey hope, not guilt. "I am here to represent humans who wish to change, humans who wish to learn, humans who want to—" "Learn," the queen interrupted sharply. "Your words are fragile, human. They mean nothing if your actions are not worthy. Tell me, what have your kind done that deserves trust?" Jonathan's chest tightened. The weight of her words pressed down on him, and for a moment he wanted to turn and flee. But he remembered why he was here. He remembered the people who had fought to save the planet, the scientists trying to reverse climate damage, the countless humans trying to do good in a world that often rewarded destruction. He squared his shoulders. "I am not here to speak for the past," he said, voice steadier now. "I am here to speak for the future. I am here to show you that we can rise above our failures, that we can choose life over destruction, that we can honor worlds like yours instead of harming them." The Queen's gaze did not soften, but it did not turn away either. For the first time, Jonathan felt a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. The first step had been taken. The first words had been spoken. And in that silence that followed, he realized that everything he had worked for, everything he had hoped for, now rested on what came next. Jonathan's chest ached as the Queen's words echoed in the grand hall. Her voice was not just loud. It carried the weight of centuries, the judgment of countless lives, and the raw intensity of a species that had survived countless cosmic wars. Every word she spoke made him feel smaller, weaker, almost invisible. Yet, somewhere deep inside, a stubborn spark of determination began to glow. He would not shrink away, not now, not when humanity's future might be judged in these moments. "You dare speak to me without understanding," the Queen repeated, her voice now sharper, more pointed. The crystal walls seemed to tremble with her power. "Do you know what it is to live 1,000 years and watch the worlds around you die because of greed, stupidity, and arrogance? Your kind destroys without thought. You poison your own water, burn your own forests, kill your own creatures, and yet you speak of peace." Jonathan felt his hands tighten into fists. He could almost feel the fire of her words burning through him, igniting guilt, shame, and fear all at once. He wanted to speak, to explain, but the Queen was relentless. "And now you come here," she continued, her voice rising like a storm, "standing in my palace, claiming goodwill. Do you think words can erase the blood of your species past? Do you think empty gestures can hide the scars of your civilization?" He could hear the whispers of the attendants around him. Their bodies stiffened, eyes fixed on him, as though they were waiting to see if humanity would crumble under this judgment. He realized that this moment was not just a test of diplomacy. It was a test of character. If he faltered, if he allowed fear or shame to control him, they would see humanity as weak, undeserving, unworthy of trust. Jonathan swallowed hard and forced himself to meet the Queen's fiery gaze. "I know humans have caused great pain," he said, his voice steadier now, "and I am not here to hide that truth. We have failed, our history is full of mistakes, our past is, but that is not all we are. We are also capable of creation, of love, of learning, of change, and that is why I stand before you." The Queen's eyes narrowed. Her massive, shimmering body leaned forward, and the hall seemed to grow colder, more imposing. "Words are easy," she said. "Anyone can say them, but actions define the worth of a species. Tell me, human, what makes you think your kind deserves a second chance?" Jonathan's heart pounded. He could feel the weight of every human failure on his shoulders. He thought of the oceans choked with plastic, the forests reduced to ash, the cities choking in smoke. But then he thought of the people who fought to change the world, the scientists developing cures, the teachers inspiring hope, the countless ordinary humans who risked everything to save lives and preserve the planet. He thought of his own courage, his willingness to face this alien queen despite fear, doubt, and danger. "I cannot speak for all humans," he said, "but I can speak for those of us who refuse to give up on life. We may have failed in the past, but we can choose differently. We can rise above greed and destruction. We can honor life, not destroy it. I am here to prove that we can be better, not just in words, but in deeds." For a moment, silence fell over the hall. The Queen's gaze bored into him, unblinking, intense. Jonathan's palms were sweaty, his knees weak, yet he did not step back. He had no choice but to face her judgment head-on. The weight of history, of the countless generations who had suffered from human mistakes, pressed down on him, but he refused to collapse under it. Then, unexpectedly, the Queen's voice shifted slightly. The fury was still there, but beneath it, Jonathan detected curiosity, even a hint of grudging respect. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "there is more to your species than I believed. Perhaps a spark of hope remains if you can prove it." Jonathan exhaled, relief mingling with exhaustion. The first barrier had been crossed, not through charm or lies, but through honesty, courage, and the willingness to acknowledge the truth. He understood now that this was only the beginning. Words alone would not be enough. Actions, trials, and heart would determine the fate of humanity in the eyes of the... But as he stood there, trembling yet resolute, he realized something else. The fiery reply that had shaken him so deeply was not just anger, it was a challenge. And Jonathan, representing all of humanity, was ready to meet it. Jonathan felt the weight of the Queen's judgment pressing down on him, but he refused to step back. Every human flaw she had mentioned, polluted oceans, burned forests, wars over resources, was real. He could not deny it. Yet deep inside, he believed there was more to humanity than destruction. There had to be. Otherwise, why would he have dedicated his life to this moment? Why would countless humans risk everything to protect their world, to help strangers, to heal others? I know humans have made grave mistakes, Jonathan said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. We have destroyed, yes. We have caused pain, loss, and suffering not just to ourselves, but to our planet. I will not deny that. But to judge all of us by our failures alone would be unfair. There is another side to humanity, a side that fights to protect life, to honor it, to learn and grow. I stand before you as one of those humans. I stand before you to show that we can be better. The Queen's golden eyes narrowed, studying him. Her gaze was so intense that Jonathan felt as though she could peer into his very thoughts, his intentions, even the fears he tried to hide. Words are easy, she said slowly. Anyone can claim righteousness. Anyone can claim honor or hope. But can you prove it, human? Can you show me that your species has the strength to choose life over destruction, courage over fear? Jonathan swallowed hard, his throat dry, but he held his ground. He knew this was the moment that would define him, not just as an ambassador, but as a representative of all humanity. I cannot speak for every human, he said quietly, but I can speak for myself, and I can speak for those who fight to protect life. We are flawed, yes, but we are not without conscience. We have the ability to learn, to grow, to correct our mistakes. And I am here to show you that we are willing to do so, even when it is hard, even when it costs us everything. The Queen leaned forward slightly, her scales glinting in the shimmering light of the palace. Your words are bold, human, bold enough to risk insult from a species older and wiser than your own. Bold enough to claim hope where it may not exist. Bold enough to face me without faltering. But hope is fragile. Courage is fragile. What will you do when your words are not enough? Jonathan felt a surge of determination. His legs had not weakened yet, though his heart raced. His hands were sweaty, but his spirit burned. Then I will act, he said firmly. I will prove that hope and courage are not just words. I will face challenges, trials, and risks to show that humanity can honor life, respect other species, and fight for what is right. I will not hide behind excuses. I will not turn away in fear. I will meet your judgment, no matter how severe, because our future and our potential depends on it. The Queen's gaze did not soften, yet for the first time, Jonathan thought he saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, that he was not speaking lightly, that he truly believed in the words he spoke, that he was willing to risk everything for the ideals he represented. You speak with fire, human, the Queen said, her voice a low rumble now like distant thunder. You acknowledge the darkness of your kind, yet you claim the light. Many fall into despair and rage. Few dare to hope and act. Perhaps you are one of the few who can carry that burden. Perhaps you are worthy of the next step. Jonathan's chest swelled with cautious relief. This was more than a small victory. It was the first sign that the Queen might see humanity as more than just a failed species. But he also knew this was only the beginning. Words alone had won a chance. Actions would secure trust. Courage would need to be proven in trials, in choices, in deeds that spoke louder than any speech. He straightened his back, taking a deep breath, letting the weight of responsibility settle into his bones. I am ready, Your Majesty, he said. I am ready to prove that humanity can rise above its mistakes. I am ready to face any challenge you deem necessary. I do not speak lightly. I do not promise easily, but I promise this: I will not fail you. I will not fail humanity." For a moment the queen was silent. Then she spoke, her voice both thunderous and strangely calm. "Very well, human, words are done. Let your actions speak. Step forward and face the trial that will show whether your species deserves hope or nothing at all." Jonathan's heart pounded. He had no idea what awaited him, but he felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. This was no longer a meeting of words. This was a test of courage, of heart, of humanity itself. And Jonathan, trembling yet determined, knew he would face it no matter the cost. The palace shifted before Jonathan's eyes. The walls of crystal and light twisted and stretched, forming a vast arena he had never imagined. The floor glowed with soft, golden patterns that seemed to pulse beneath his feet, and high above, floating lights illuminated the space like artificial stars. Around the arena, creatures of all shapes and sizes, and others Jonathan did not recognize, watched silently, their eyes fixed on him. The silence was deafening. Jonathan swallowed hard, feeling the fear crawl up his spine. This was no longer a conversation. This was a test of courage, intelligence, and heart. His chest tightened, but he refused to show weakness. He had come too far to falter now. He looked toward the queen, who remained on a raised platform at the far end of the arena. Her golden scales glimmered, her eyes sharp and calculating. "If humanity wishes to be judged," she said, her voice carrying across the arena like a wave, "let it face the trial of courage and heart. Only then will I know if your words are true or empty." Jonathan nodded, trying to steady his racing heartbeat. He could feel every eye on him, judging, expecting, hoping, or perhaps doubting. "I accept," he said aloud, though the words trembled slightly. He had trained for diplomacy, not for trials of courage, yet he knew that backing down was not an option. This was bigger than himself. This was about humanity. The first challenge appeared before him without warning. A creature, small but clearly intelligent, was trapped inside a swirling energy field. Its cries were high-pitched, desperate, echoing through the arena. The field seemed unstable, crackling with dangerous energy that could burn or crush anything that touched it. Jonathan's first instinct was to hesitate. One wrong move could destroy the creature, and possibly himself. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. Every fiber of his body screamed fear, but he focused on what he had come to do. He reminded himself that courage was not the absence of fear, it was acting despite it. Carefully, he observed the energy field, studying its rhythm and the patterns in which it fluctuated. Then, with careful timing and steady hands, he reached in. Sparks of energy licked at his gloves, but he held firm, moving slowly, deliberately, until he could lift the creature free. The audience gasped. Jonathan felt his chest heave with relief and adrenaline. He placed the creature on the arena floor, safe and unharmed. It looked at him with wide, trusting eyes, and for a moment Jonathan felt a bond form, as if the creature understood that he had risked himself for its life. But the trial was not over. More challenges came in quick succession. Each was designed to test a different aspect of humanity: empathy, intelligence, patience, and judgment. One challenge forced him to navigate a labyrinth of shifting walls where one wrong turn could trap him forever. Another required him to calm a panicked alien creature, using nothing but gestures and gentle words. Each task pushed him to the limit, physically and emotionally. He stumbled, made mistakes, and sometimes doubted himself, but he never gave up. With each success, Jonathan felt a small surge of confidence. He began to realize that the trials were not just about proving himself. They were about proving what humanity could become. The Queen was watching, yes, but more importantly, Jonathan was learning that courage and compassion were choices, actions that defined a species more than its failures ever could. Finally, after what felt like hours, the first set of trials ended. Jonathan collapsed to his knees, exhausted, drenched in sweat, and trembling from both fear and relief. But as he looked up, he saw the Queen descending from her platform, her massive form casting a long shadow over him. Her eyes were still sharp, still judging, but there was a flicker of acknowledgement, recognition, perhaps even respect. "You faced my first trial," she said, her voice carrying the same power as before, yet softer now. "You risked yourself, you showed care for life, and you acted with courage. Few would dare to do as you did. Few humans perhaps have this strength. But the trials are not over, human. You have shown promise, but promise alone will not secure your species' future. Prepare yourself for what comes next." Jonathan nodded, though he could barely stand. He felt the fatigue in his muscles, the trembling in his hands, the rapid pounding of his heart. But he also felt something else. Hope. Hope that humanity could be seen for more than its mistakes. Hope that courage, compassion, and determination could carry a species forward. And in that moment, standing in the glowing arena, Jonathan realized something profound. The trials were not just tests for him. They were tests for all of humanity. Every choice he made, every act of courage and care was a message to the Queen, and perhaps even to himself. Humanity's worth was being judged, and he had taken the first step toward proving it. Jonathan's muscles ached, his body trembling from the first trial, but he did not sit down. The arena seemed to shift again, walls of light bending into shapes that made his stomach twist. The Queen's voice rang out, steady and commanding, echoing across the vast space. "Human courage is not enough. Empathy, judgment, and resilience define worth. You will now face the trials of heart. Fail, and your species will be judged accordingly." He swallowed hard, knowing that the true test had just begun. The first trial had tested his courage. Now he would be tested for his compassion, his ability to understand life not just as a human, but as a being connected to the universe. Jonathan felt fear rise in him, but he squared his shoulders. He had come too far to falter now. Every human hope, every sacrifice of his species seemed to press upon him, demanding that he rise. The first challenge appeared almost immediately. A child, small, fragile, and terrified, was trapped atop a floating platform surrounded by a swirling vortex of energy. The creature cried out, its voice piercing Jonathan's heart. He could feel its fear as if it were his own. He hesitated, knowing one misstep could hurt it. But then he remembered the words of the Queen, the trials of courage he had already faced, and the responsibility he carried for humanity's future. Jonathan focused, his mind calm despite the fear. He studied the vortex, calculating the timing, the energy patterns. He leapt, dodging bursts of light that seared like fire, and reached the platform. With careful hands, he lifted the child, feeling the creature tremble against him. Every second stretched like eternity, but he did not falter. When he finally set it down safely on the arena floor, the creature looked up at him with trust-filled eyes, and Jonathan felt a warmth in his chest he had never known. The next challenge required him to make a choice. Two creatures were in danger. One was a rare plant-animal hybrid vital to the ecosystem, the other a being of pure energy, essential for maintaining the palace's life support systems. Jonathan could only save one. Panic surged, but he forced himself to breathe. He weighed their importance not as a human, but as a guardian of life. He chose the energy being, reasoning that its survival would protect the lives of many others. His decision was swift but careful, and he acted with precision. The watching murmured, impressed by his judgment. Hours passed, though time felt suspended. Each trial pushed him further, tests of patience, compassion, and understanding. Jonathan fell, stumbled, and made mistakes, but he rose each time, guided by a determination that went beyond fear. With every success, he felt a subtle change. The Queen's gaze, once fiery and unyielding, now held a flicker of acknowledgement, of respect. Perhaps, she thought, humanity could rise above its flaws. Finally, the last trial appeared. Jonathan faced a reflection of himself, but not as he truly was. Instead, it was a version twisted by greed, arrogance, and violence, the embodiment of humanity's darkest instincts. The reflection taunted him, mocked his ideals, urged him to give up. Jonathan felt despair clawing at him. He could have fled, given in to fear, and let the mirror win. But he remembered the faces of those he had saved, the hope he carried, the promise he had made. With every ounce of strength, he raised his chin and faced the reflection. "I am not what you represent," Jonathan said firmly, his voice echoing in the arena. "I am not the destruction, the greed, or the cruelty. I am humanity's potential, the part that fights for life, for hope, for change. You may exist, but you do not define us." The mirror shattered, and Jonathan fell to his knees, exhausted, every muscle screaming in protest. Around him, they watched in silence. The queen descended slowly, her massive form looming over him. Her golden eyes glimmered with something Jonathan had never expected: approval. "You have faced the trials of heart," she said softly, yet with power that resonated through the arena. "You have shown courage, empathy, and judgment. Few beings could withstand these tests, let alone succeed. Perhaps there is hope for your kind." Jonathan's chest swelled with relief and pride. He had risked everything, faced fear, and shown not only the queen but himself that humanity was capable of more than destruction. He had earned a small measure of respect from a species far older and wiser than his own. And for the first time, he dared to believe that the future might hold something greater for his people, if they were willing to fight for it. Jonathan could barely stand. His body ached from the trials, his muscles burned, and sweat drenched his clothes. Every step he had taken in the arena had tested him, not just physically, but emotionally and morally. He felt as though he had given everything he had and more. Yet, as he knelt before the alien queen, he sensed that the moment of judgment was nearing. The queen descended from her elevated platform with a grace that made her immense size almost serene. Her golden scales shimmered like flowing fire, reflecting the arena lights. Her eyes, deep and intelligent, bore into him, not with the fury of before, but with a sharp curiosity and quiet intensity that made Jonathan's heart pound. He had faced fear, pain, and doubt, yet now he felt something he had not anticipated: the weight of recognition. "You have faced the trials," the queen said, her voice calm but echoing with authority. "You have risked your life, not for glory or reward, but for beings weaker than yourself. You have chosen wisely when faced with impossible decisions. You have shown empathy when it was easier to ignore, courage when fear demanded surrender. Few beings, even among my own species, would succeed where you have." Jonathan's chest swelled. The words burned into him, not with fire, but with warmth and hope. After all the trials, all the fear, all the judgment, he realized that the queen's respect was not given lightly. It had to be earned through action, through courage, through the willingness to stand for more than oneself. "You speak of humanity as if it can rise above its own destruction," the queen continued, stepping closer. The light reflected off her scales made her almost blinding, yet Jonathan did not flinch. "Do you truly believe your kind can learn, change, and honor life, or are you only a single spark, fleeting and fragile?" Jonathan took a deep breath, his throat dry, his voice steady despite exhaustion. "I cannot speak for all humans," he said. "Many will fail and many have, but some of us, those who strive to protect, to learn, to grow, carry the potential to rise. I am one of those humans, and I will do everything in my power to show that we can be more than our mistakes. We can be worthy of trust, respect, and even hope." The queen's gaze softened slightly. She leaned forward, and for the first time, Jonathan felt that her presence was not entirely intimidating. There was a recognition of effort, of heart, and perhaps a grudging admiration. "You have carried your species' flaws openly, yet you have not faltered," she said. "You have taken responsibility where many would deny it. You have risked your life where many would hide. This is the mark of a leader, not of one who conquers, but of one who inspires, one who uplifts others even in the face of fear and doubt." Jonathan's knees trembled as he absorbed her words. No human had ever been spoken to this way by a being of such power. He had faced judgment, fury, and disdain, and yet now, standing here exhausted but unbroken, he felt the first true sense of recognition, not just for himself, but for humanity as a whole. "You speak of hope," the queen said, her eyes glimmering. Do you understand what it means to carry the weight of a species' future on your shoulders? Jonathan nodded, his voice firm despite exhaustion. Yes, Your Majesty, I do, and I accept that responsibility, not for glory, not for reward, but because it is the right thing to do, because life is worth protecting, because hope is worth fighting for. And I will fight for my species, for other beings, and for the chance to prove that we can be more than our past. The Queen regarded him silently for a long moment. Then slowly she extended a clawed hand, not in threat but in acknowledgement. The gesture, simple yet profound, made Jonathan feel as though the impossible had been achieved. A bond had been formed, tenuous yet real. Recognition had shifted into something deeper, respect. "Rise, human," she said, her voice both commanding and gentle. "You have proven that your words mean more than noise, that your courage and heart are genuine. You carry hope not as a fragile thought, but as an action. Perhaps, just perhaps, your species is worthy of trust and alliance. But do not forget, hope must be lived, not claimed. Your deeds will shape your future." Jonathan rose, exhausted but alive with a new strength. For the first time, he felt that humanity had a chance, not just to survive, but to rise. He had faced judgment, trials, and fear, and he had emerged recognized not just as a human, but as a symbol of his species' potential. And in that quiet, luminous arena, Jonathan understood something profound. Recognition was powerful, but the true test of humanity was only just beginning. Jonathan stood in the glowing arena, his body aching from exhaustion, his mind still racing with the memory of the trials. Every decision he had made, every act of courage and compassion had led him to this moment. The alien queen, massive and golden, towered before him, her eyes calm yet intense. For the first time, she did not see him as a mere human. She saw the possibility of something greater, an echo of hope carried by a fragile species that had struggled and faltered, yet still had the courage to rise. "You have proven much, human," the Queen said, her voice steady and commanding, yet laced with something almost tender. "You have faced fear without fleeing, you have acted with compassion when others would have turned away, and you have chosen life over destruction at every step. Few beings, even among the oldest races of the galaxy, can do what you have done." Jonathan felt his chest swell, a mix of relief, pride, and disbelief. He had faced fire, both literal and metaphorical, and survived. But this acknowledgement meant more than survival. It meant that humanity, a species often judged for its mistakes, had a chance to be seen as more than its failures. The Queen's massive clawed hand lowered toward him, not in threat, but in a gesture of acceptance. "Rise, human. You carry hope not only for yourself, but for your kind. What you have shown today is the measure of potential. Remember, courage is not a single act, nor is empathy a fleeting choice. These are the seeds from which greatness grows." Jonathan slowly stood, knees shaking, and looked into her eyes. "I understand, Your Majesty. I will not forget. I will not allow humanity to squander this chance. We will rise. We will honor life, respect other species, and strive to be worthy of the trust you have begun to grant us." The Queen regarded him for a long moment. Then, as if satisfied, she stepped back, and the arena around them shifted again. The walls of light softened, the floating patterns calming to a gentle shimmer. The creatures watching, thee and others, began to stir, some nodding subtly, others murmuring in acknowledgement of what they had witnessed. Humanity had passed a test that very few species had ever faced. Jonathan's mind raced. He thought of Earth, of the oceans and forests, the cities and the people struggling to survive and improve. The weight of his responsibility pressed upon him, yet now it felt different, not crushing, but inspiring. He had seen what was possible when courage met heart. He had seen that humanity, though flawed, could rise above fear and destruction. "You carry more than words," the Queen said softly, almost as if speaking to herself. "You carry proof that a species can choose to be better. Do not waste this opportunity, human. Teach your kind to honor life as you have. Let this moment echo through generations. Let your deeds match your words. Jonathan bowed deeply, a gesture of respect, gratitude, and promise. I will, your majesty, I swear it. He could feel tears threatening to spill, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of hope and the possibility of change. The queen inclined her head. Then rise and take your place among those who will shape the future. Let humanity's path be defined not by its mistakes, but by its courage, its compassion, and its choices. You have earned this chance. Make it count. As Jonathan turned toward the exit of the arena, he felt something he had never felt before. Not fear, not doubt, but possibility. The trials were over, but the journey was only beginning. Humanity had been judged, and a door had been opened. It was up to him and all humans to walk through it, to prove that the spark of hope he carried was not an illusion, but a reality that could change the fate of an entire species. He looked back one last time. The queen's gaze followed him, not with suspicion or fury, but with something like faith. He understood then that she had seen what he had always hoped humanity could be: brave, compassionate, and capable of rising above its flaws. And in that shining arena, surrounded by the glow of alien light and the weight of centuries of judgment, Jonathan Hayes took his first true step into the future. Humanity was no longer just a species of mistakes. It was a species of potential, a species capable of greatness. And he would fight with everything he had to make sure that potential became reality. For the first time, hope felt tangible, real, and unstoppable.